Hello and greetings, everyone. Welcome back. From gender identity to critical race theory to ongoing, seemingly lax border security to burning cities, arguably half of the American electorate feel as though their country is being turned inside out, and they believe that this has happened rather quickly, as a matter of fact. In this chapter, we're going to be we're going to look at an even sharper turns that I've been highlighting up to this point. So some sharper turns, that we've already studied with some pivotal periods of change. So turn to page 213. And we are going to be getting into chapter 5 and the world being turned inside out. World's being turned inside out, roughly about 1000 BC to 350 BC. The challenges ranged from warfare, political upheaval, economic strains, and societal change, and these all serve to change Afro-Eurasia, specifically their empires and states. And what emerges are second-generation societies across Afro-Eurasia, and in an era that some would call the Axial Age. And so in this period, thinkers emerged to influence the way folks looked at the world and contemplate their place in the world. And you're going to hear about thinkers that I'm going to mention some names that you've heard of, right? Legendary figures way back in history, right? So for the first time, we see not only new societies develop in Africa, sub-Saharan, but in the Western Hemisphere too, namely the Americas from Central America on down. Like I said, I've emphasized this before. North America, pretty much Johnny come latelys, as I like to say, on the world stage. Take a look at where we're going to be going here, and get this going here. Get this set up. Show my video panel. There we go. Starting to get acclimated to all this, right? So in this chapter, we want to describe the challenges that Afro-Eurasian empires and states faced in the first millennium BC. We want to compare the range of solutions the empires devised, identify, as I said, these axial age thinkers, and analyze axial age thinkers and their distinctive ideas. We want to explain the relationship between the axial age thinkers across Afro-Eurasia and the political and social situations to which they were responding to, and then compare the political, cultural, and social developments across Afro-Eurasia with those occurring in the Americas and sub-Saharan Africa. Major terms and names, I should say, probably along with the terms. The Axial Age, pivotal period in the mid-first millennium BC, when these, contemplating what word to use here. I didn't want to get too melodramatic, but I went with radical. Radical thinkers offered these dramatically new ideas during this time period that challenged their times. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking radical is probably a safe word to use. Let me see, we're going next. Confucius, right? Some of the names that you're probably familiar with. 551 to 479 BC, a radical thinker. There we go again, radical thinker, especially about how ethical living that was centered on benevolence, proper ritual, and piety, okay, toward ancestors, both the living and the dead, shaped the politically engaged superior gentleman, transforming society and government in East Asia. Taoism, just the opposite, right? Probably just the exact opposite. East Asian philosophy of this axial age, emphasizing the following of the Tao, DAO, the natural way of the natural way of the cosmos, kind of going with the flow, right? And held that the best way to do that was just doing nothing, letting life happen. Okay. Buddha, otherwise known as the enlightened one. Sorry about that. Got to pull that down. Buddha, the enlightened one, applied to Siddhartha Gautama, 563, 483 BC, his ideas about the relationship between desire and suffering, and how to eliminate both through wisdom, ethical behavior, mental discipline in order to achieve contentment or nirvana, okay? And offers a radical challenge to Hinduism. And Hinduism to Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, was too doctrinal for him. It was too doctrinal, and it was easy to follow or to believe in doctrines, but he wanted it. The way I interpret Buddhism, he looks like he wanted to put it into practice, right? And Hinduism was just too doctrinal. Didn't stress the works, right? The Olmecs, Mesoamerican people, right? Emerging around 1500 BC, whose name means inhabitants in the land of rubber. Inhabitants in the land of rubber. We're talking South America here. Rubber was one of their major trade goods. So, and they would live in these decentralized villages, right? And this complex stratified society shared language and religious ideas that were practiced and at the sacred religious centers. And to say the least, a very spiritual people. We'll get into that a little more, dig a little deeper to that when I get to them. And then the Meroitic kingdom, thriving kingdom from the 4th century BC to 300 AD, a successor to Kush. It was influenced by both Egyptian and cultures out of Sudan, right? So we're looking at that northern Africa region there. So let's guess it's time to get into it, right? Get into the facts of the matter. So let's where do I want to go here? I think we're right there. Okay. Yep, world's turned inside out. The axial age here. Yes, mentioned that a lot already, the axial age. And here, the axial age, to emphasize its pivotal, I guess. Pivotal, probably the best word for it, and transitional role between the declining old empires that we've been looking at of ancient Egypt, right? Southwest Asia, Northern India, and Zhao China, right? And the later empires of Alexander the Great, Chandragupta's Mauryan Empire in India, Augustus's Rome, right? And Han Wudi's China, which we'll look at these in chapter 6 and 7. But this is instrumental to this this axial age is instrumental to that dynamic period where the ethical, philosophical, and religious innovations taking place in India, China, and Europe. And you can turn to map 5.1. I would probably recommend turning there at this juncture, looking at that. Although each of these resulting cultures in East Asia, South Asia, and the Mediterranean were distinct from the others, we might call them, and I mentioned this already, these second generation societies, given that they built on their predecessors, yet they represented a departure from those ancient legacies. And I would, for further study on this, because of time, for what I want to cover today, and for what I want you guys to know, generally for the tests and quizzes, you could check out current trends in world history and what makes the axial age. It goes even deeper than where I'm going to go, and it's toward the end of this chapter. So just kind of an FYI for you. So we're going to move on here to, you have your map there, Eastern Zhao China, right? Eastern Zhao China. Okay, and here you can see that on your map as well, along the Pacific Ocean there, the Gobi Desert. Map 5.2. Power in Eastern Zhao. Innovations in thought. I want to concentrate on this. Many important teachers emerged in China's axial age, each with their own disciplines. The philosophies of what these 100 masters, they were called, a term mostly used at the time by itinerant scholars, and this came to be known as the 100 schools of thought, right? And so they mostly, among the most influential were disciplines or philosophical schools of thought were Confucianism and Taoism. Let's take a look at Confucius first. He believed the founders of the Zhao dynasty had established ideas of good government and principled action. He sets out in search of an enlightened ruler to accomplish this. His teachings basically stem from his belief that human beings behaved ethically, not because they wanted to achieve salvation or a heavenly reward, but because it was in their human makeup to do so, right? Maybe this is an extreme example. I'm thinking that if I walk out of Big Lots or Walmart and I have an aneurysm, collapse, most people, if not all of them, are going to try to rush to my aid, right? They're not going to be thinking about some reward in the afterlife. It's built within people to want to help each other out who are in some kind of distress. And I have nothing against Walmart or Big Lots. It's just a random scene that I was picturing, right? To make the example. Taoism. Taoism, as I said at the top of this, almost the inverse of Confucianism. And Taoism stressed that the best path, Tao, for living was to follow the natural order of things. And its main principle was Wu Wei, W-U W-E-Y. You don't necessarily need to know that, and that means doing nothing, right? Doing nothing, spontaneity, non-interference, and an acceptance of the world as it is, rather than attempting to change it through politics and government were what mattered. Or if you want to take a look at it in a broader scope, Confucianism had a more national focus, right? More national focus, where Taoism was local. Taoism was more local, and certainly not looking for behavioral monitors, right? Nationally, belief that you could probably work it out on your own if you just go with the flow, right? As I said earlier. Alliance between scholars and states. Scholars depended on the ruler's patronage. Rulers relied on scholars' expertise. Innovations in state administration, and many states reorganized their administrative structures during this time period. Administrators were looked at as superior men, right? Junzi, superior men. Then you have your innovations in warfare. So with the administrative changes and reforms came reforms in military recruitment and warfare. The warring states, right? The warring states, however, relied on mass infantries of peasants. And in this time period, we're in that warring states era, warring states era. So in addition to the conscripted peasants, conscripted infantries of the peasants, whose prescription was made easier by the registration of peasant households. So in addition to this conscripted peasant infantry, armies began to boost their elite professionalism, certainly professional troops equipped with, of course, iron armor and weapons, and wielding the recently invented crossbow, right? And what I want to focus on here in this little section here is the crossbow. The crossbow's tremendous power, range, and accuracy enabled those archers to be able to kill the lightly armored cavalrymen or charioteers, right? That was the next big thing last chapter, right? The charioteers at a distance, So, you know, with this improved siege technology, enemy armies were able to assault the new defensive walls of towns and frontiers, either digging under them or using these counterweighted siege ladders to scale the walls. Campaigns were no longer limited to agricultural seasons, right? You didn't retire over the winter, and instead they might stretch out over a year or longer, as a matter of fact. So these huge state armies contain as many as 1 million commoners in the infantry, supported by 1,000 chariots and 10,000 bow-wielding cavalrymen. So, and during the spring and the autumn period, one state's army would face another state's, but the warring states period armies could conceivably divide into separate forces and then wage several battles simultaneously. Economic and social changes. Warring states spurred China's economic growth. And we see agricultural, sort of an agricultural revolution. And with that, a population explosion, right? People are eating better and living longer. And then reforms during the spring and autumn period also gave the peasants land, right? Crop rotation and iron plowshares pulled by oxen. Population growth, you have environmental changes like deforestation and the extinction of animals, field erosion, and a market economy, right? Surplus agriculture products were traded for market goods. So, and with market economies, you always have better standards of living, right? Giving people that freedom to produce and create, and instead of relying on maybe elites to make those types of decisions. Some more notes there that you can stop the video on and take a look at as I start to move to the new worlds of South Asia. And here you can take a look at map 5.3. Okay, and the major states in that region you can see on the map there in the first millennium, South Asia, and you could read the inset there regarding those specific states. So in the kingdoms of South Asia, let's see, now I'm going to go back up here. In the kingdoms of South Asia, you have these oligarchic cities that were run by maybe just a few amount of people, right? It's not run by a dictator, but it's not a democracy, right? An oligarchy. And you have a new system of hierarchy that emerged alongside the old fourfold Varnas. The Varnas is the Brahmin priests, the Kshatriya warriors, the Vaishya commoners, and the Shudra laborers. And this leads to what becomes a caste system, right? A caste system. The Varnas remained the overarching theoretical basis for ranking this social order. The Jatis, that was organized not only for kinship and profession, but also even by product. Kind of interesting ranking here in that occupation and birth received new emphasis. You had a booming, along with the booming agriculture, you had, ranking people by what products they were producing, right? Their profession by product. So, and then you have an emerging urban growth during this time, urban centers. For instance, traders. Traders were regarded as the pure, right? The pure of the professions, certainly purer than the artisans, right? The artisans who were creating products, while those making gold utensils had higher status than those making copper utensils or iron products. Okay, you get the picture. Now, Jadis banned intermarriage to prevent other groups from assessing their knowledge. Religion buttressed this hierarchical system. Brahmanic texts, right? The Brahmanic texts, some from an earlier period and some from the present, kind of invoked this this idea of purity, right? This principle of purity and pollution to rank Varnas and Jatis and to hinder movement between them. See this too. We'll probably look at this a little bit like with Roman culture as well. Your elites, they intermarried to keep power and influence within their social circles. New cities and a changing economy. Okay, agricultural surpluses led to the need for markets, and Cities in this period included, the following: emerging relevance of bankers, merchants, and teachers. Rural households moved to the city and served as brokers between farms and markets. And you have this elaborate division of labor, which suggests high degrees of specialization and commercialization. And the less affluent took up trades in craft work, and traders and bankers created coins and determined the value of those. City dwellers had more material wealth, but their lives were more uncertain. The untouchables, right? The untouchables, which is a social class that was created, and these are those who did the dirtiest jobs, such as removing garbage and sewage. They're kind of looked at as disgusting class. They eventually became receptive to audiences for challenges to this system. So basically, you had that caste system, and the Brahmins, the religious circles, were at the top, right? Then you had the military, and then you had the your artisan business classes, and at the bottom were the untouchables. And again, looked at as disgusting and revolting, but the untouchables, India is the world's largest democracy. The untouchables actually have seats set aside for them in the halls of India's lawmaking forums. Okay, so interesting. Take a look at the Brahmins a little bit at the top of that caste system. Frightened by the Brahmins were alarmed, frightened by these urban threats that I just talked about. So they sought to strengthen their relationships with the kings by establishing the idea of a monarch, endowed by power. Mahavira and Jainism. Vardhama Mahavira, 540 to 468 BC, popularized the doctrines of Jainism. The doctrines of Jainism. The Jains, their religious doctrines, this isn't close cousins to Hinduism. The Jains' religious doctrines kind of emphasize the idea that aestheticism, rather than knowledge, would enable one to avoid harming one another, harming other creatures, and thereby purify the soul. Enter the Buddha and Buddhism. Siddhartha, Gautama, Buddha, the enlightened one. It was the most direct challenge to traditional Brahmanic thinking, and that came from Siddhartha Gautama. He was a contemporary, actually, of Mahavira and also Confucius, later known as the Buddha, right? The enlightened one. Gautama objected to Brahmanic beliefs, their rituals, and their sacrifices, and their preference for kingship that basically kept the priestly class in power. So his Axial Age teachings provided the people of South Asia and elsewhere with alternatives to established traditions. He was the son of a highly respected Kshatriya warrior, and Gautama was born into a comfortable life. He came from a well-to-do family, so he didn't come from a hard-up background, right? Economically, so he lived, life of comfort in a small oligarchic community nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas. Yet at the age of 29, he, as we say, he splits, right? He leaves his family, walks away from everything, leaving behind his father, wife, and newborn son. So simple, clear teachings were very appealing to non-Brahmins. He delivers his dissident message in the colloquial dialect of the Sanskrit, which we took a look at last chapter. So let's move on to the Mediterranean region, and here we go. Yes, on to the Mediterranean. Get my screen share. Well, there we go. My side panel, right? I got to get my side panel up there. Here we go. So the Mediterranean world. And you can turn to map 5.4, right? I would advise that, certainly for you visual types. You have your political, economic, and social changes that lead to new ways of organizing your second generation societies. Violent upheavals freed many from the domination of the Assyrians and the Persians. And you had new thinking and new societies at the margins, and exchanging of trade goods and ideas about the city-states. You have your formation of these city-states. And we turn to page 232. I'm going to talk about the ladies a little bit here in a few moments, but with order restored in the 9th and 8th centuries BC, independent self-governing city-states were created. Small family units were more important, social units of the city-state. Only adult free males had full citizenship rights. Adult women of free birth remained enclosed within the private world of the family and had no standing to debate policy in public. They couldn't vote or hold office, although they did go out in the public. They did go out in the public for religious festivals, of which there were a lot of them, right? Upper class women who did carry on intelligent conversations with men in public were criticized, right? Looked at with suspicion. Athens, modern day Greece. Athens develops during this time period into one of the most dynamic of the city-states. The Athenian city-state was small by comparison, right? The standards of, the old ancient empires. It covered actually less than 2,000 square miles. I mean, barely big enough to be a Persian satrapy, right? Persian province. And its population of roughly 300,000, and that doesn't count the 60,000 chattel slaves, which I'm going to talk about shortly too, was significantly smaller than the population of the 35 million who lived under Persian rule. Nonetheless, the city-states were competitive places. They were competitive places. Their histories relate rivalries between individuals, social classes, and other groups. So you had competition for honor, and prestige was a value that shaped behavior in the city-states. This extreme competitive ethnic kind of finds a outlet in organized sporting events, right? This extreme competitive ethic, almost from the moment that Greek city-states emerged, was there, right? So, and then athletic contests began to spring up, and the greatest of these competitions were the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games, which began in 1776 BC at the Olympia in southern Greece. Economic innovations, they developed open trading markets and a system of money that enabled buyers and sellers to know the precise value of commodities so that the exchanges were efficient. This is kind of cool. You start to see a money system being emerging here. So the agora, and you could turn to page 234. 234, you can see ruins of an old agora, and you can read the caption there. But to take my word for overall, it was an old Greek marketplace. So it was a large open area where the individuals bought and sold commodities. These increasingly complex transactions, as you look at the ruins there, required money rather than barter, right? Rather than money or barter or gift exchanges. So like the states in Eastern Zhao China and the Vedic South Asia, the Greek city-states were issuing a striking variety of coins by the end of the 5th century BC. So, and other people such as the Phoenicians, we looked at last chapter, and I wanted to, I can't do it now or beyond that, but I wanted to say that you could argue that maybe the earliest forms of capitalism came from the Phoenicians, right, with their dye trade. Maybe not capitalism in earnest, but I would attribute that to the Protestant Reformation and Calvinism, Geneva, Switzerland. But Phoenicians, the Etruscans, we're going to take a look at them very shortly. They were the first inhabitants of Italy. The Etruscans and Persians, or see all these groups here began using these coins, these Greek coins. So in contrast to the privilege enjoyed by these elites was the traffic in human flesh, right? Slavery, treating men, women, and children as objects of commerce to be bought and sold in markets, created a new form of commercial slavery called chattel slavery, right? So slavery, we're talking about here the forced and unfree labor of war captives, or those who sold themselves to pay debt, had existed since the 3rd, 2nd century millennium BC. But what was new in this Mediterranean context was the commodification of bodies and the scale of the unfortunate exchange. So when dangerous and exhausting tasks such as mining and farming required extra labor, freeborn citizens ended up purchasing these enslaved laborers. A very sad chapter. Some new ideas, right? I mentioned some of the thinkers. We've looked at several already. In the 5th century BC, we have probably the 2nd century BC, 2nd, 3rd century, the Greek philosophers, or the wisdom lovers, right? We're focusing on humans and their place in society, okay? They were focused on that instead of military conquests. And some of these professional thinkers tried to describe the ideal state, based off of that type of attitude and mindset. Socrates being one of them, right, lived from 469 BC to 399, 70 years. He stressed, this probably gets to the crux of that mindset and attitude. He stressed the importance of honor and integrity as opposed to wealth and power, okay? And then there was Plato, right, 427 BC to 347. Common cultures in the Americas and sub-Saharan Africa. You have the Chavin in the Andes Mountains around 1400 BC. These peoples began to share a common belief system. They also began to organize their society vertically along the steep mountainsides and the deep fertile valleys of the Andes Mountains. And you can look at map 5.1, I think would be appropriate now. Map 5.1. So what unified the fragmented Chavin communities was a shared artistic, I don't think, no question about an artistic tradition manifested in their devotion to powerful deities. And you look at the bottom of 239 for one of their temple complexes. And inside one of those temple complexes, down in like tunnel areas, you could see the El Lanzan, which is etched with snakes and felines and humans combined into one hybrid supernatural form, not real live or not dead humans, but carvings, images of humans. Going to start moving now toward the Olmecs, also in South America, Central America. The Olmecs, again, I said it earlier at the top of all this, very deeply spiritual people. And look at map 5.5, and you could see the Olmec heartland on that map. You look at the map key, and the Olmecs are probably an example of the first generation community that created new political and economic institutions while also contemplating the profound questions about the nature of that humanity and the world beyond, right? So the culture of the Olmecs, and the name means inhabitants, right? In the land of rubber, one of their staples, sprang up from these local village roots. Okay, so the region's peoples form this loose confederation of villages scattered from the coast, and you can see that on your map, page 241, map 5.5, scattered from the coast to the highlands, mainly nestling in the river valleys and along the shores of these swampy lakes. Their residents traded with one another. They shared a common language and worshiped the same gods. So around 1500 BC, the residents of hundreds of hamlets, hundreds of these small hamlets, began to develop a single culture to spread their beliefs, their artistic achievements, and social structure far beyond their heartland. Let's see some of their artwork. So the cities as the sacred center, beneath the mounds of these devotional centers, archaeologists have found axes, knives of very, very sharp knives of sharpened obsidian and other tools. There were jade figurines, which I just showed you, and your authors have those jade figurines. I believe it's toward the back of the chapter, you can see those. So these jade figurines. What else did I write down here that I want you to see? Well, I guess what I want you to know here about these, they were all kind of buried. They were buried as tokens, and that's just what the archaeologists found. And they were buried. It's kind of like the idea of the Egyptians with the pyramids, right? They were buried for those who supposedly dwelled in the supernatural world, right? So very deeply spiritual here. Olmec devotional art depicted natural and supernatural entities, not just snakes and jaguars, which were popular with some of the other older civilizations, but and crocodiles. I didn't stress this enough when we were there. Crocodiles, a very popular, envisioned by the Egyptians. Crocodiles, very popular reptile animal, but also, you had certain humans here called shamans, right? Shamans, these village religious spiritists, whom the Olmecs believed could actually commune with the supernatural and transform themselves wholly or partly into beasts, right? I mean, you're really getting into some deep spiritual stuff here, right? I'm not going to disagree with this. You could arguably, say we're getting into some occultic stuff here. The common figurine, getting back to those figurines, the common figurine was the Jaguar, right? The Jaguar, being that was a part of man, part animal. And so shamans representing jaguars invoked the Olmec rain god and a jaguar-like being to bring rainfall and secure the land's fertility. So the Olmecs in Mesoamerica had a world of social distinctions, complex social hierarchies, and we're really not clear why that culture declined. Let's take a look at Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. We're looking at North Africa to some extent. I want to take a look now at sub-Saharan Africa. And you can look at map 5-6 for this. Africa, south of the Sahara, was the Sahel, literally meaning coast, and Arabic. Sahel is Arabic. And basically, what you saw there was just a great ocean of sand, which saw no city of great size in that period, right? Just a lot of desert. Again, you can look at map 5-6 very carefully and see that area that goes basically a horizontal strip from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, parts of the Red Sea. Nubia, including Kush and Meroe. Here, because of its proximity, still you can see it on map 5-6, because of its proximity to Egypt, it adopted many Egyptian cultural and political practices, even as it was under constant pressure, right, from their northern powerhouse in Egypt. So its successor states had to move farther south, up the Nile, to keep free from the powerful Egyptians. So the kingdom's capitals were repeatedly uprooted and relocated upriver. Down at the bottom of page 249, the temple of the lion god at Naka. Right. You can look at the caption for that. There it is, page 246 and 247. What makes an axial age, right? So for you enterprising minds, it's not that long of a read. I would advise just reading it. Take a couple minutes of reading that. The Meroitic kingdom, right? Let's take a look at the Meroitic kingdom. The Meroitic kingdom's rulers were influenced by Pharaonic culture, and in Egypt, they adapted the hieroglyphs. They erected pyramids, and in which to bury their rulers, viewing their kings as divine and worshiping the Egyptian god Amun. And lastly, your West African kingdoms. Ironworking was significant for the Nok peoples. The Nok peoples, they moved from using stone materials directly to iron, bypassing the bronze working that had been a transitional stage in the technology, characteristic of other metallurgists that we've looked at in Afro-Eurasia. On pages 260 and 261, your authors include some of the those figurines made by the Noks. On page 260, and then over on page 261, you have figurines made by the Olmec, which I mentioned earlier. So yeah, the Nok made iron axes. They made hoes, iron knives and spears, and luxury items, all for trade. Okay, so however, they did achieve historical fame, not for so much their iron smelting prowess, but for their magnificent terracotta figurines, right? And you can see, again, you can see those on page 260, their terracotta figurines. And these were discovered, I'm going to say the 1940s, right? 1940s in the tin mining regions of central Nigeria. So these naturalistic figures date to at least, or at the latest, 500 BC. And they were like these altar pieces for a cult associated with the land's fertility, placed next to new lands that were coming into cultivation. They were believed to bless the soil and enhance its productivity. So if you have a graphic organizer, you want to get that, you visual types, you want to get that out, we'll read that together, wrap this up, and look at what is up ahead. Worlds turned inside out. We looked at the Axial Age, right? Pivotal time, transitioning from declining old empires. You have innovations, ethical, philosophical, and religious innovations in India, Rome, and China, eventually spreading to Rome. Second generation societies, right, departed from their ancient legacies. We looked at the Eastern Zhao China, right? The Warring States period from 403 to 221 BC. We looked at Confucianism and Taoism, and innovations in warfare, massed infantries of peasants, the crossbow, right? The kind of the epicenter of that advanced technology for that time period, certainly in regard to warfare, right? Who's going to kill more people? South Asia, we have Varnas and Jatis, the principle of purity and pollution. The Brahmins, challenges and new beliefs. They established an idea of a monarch, right, against potential rivalries in urban areas, established the idea of a monarch. Jainism, right? Jainism, close cousin to Hinduism, stressing asceticism. And then there's Buddha, right? Buddha, born into Hinduism, and he is the brainchild of the Buddhist religion. He objected to Hinduism, too doctrinaire, not enough compassion and works. Mediterranean world, we see free women, right, and enclosed within a private world of home. Athens develops as a leading city-state, right? In modern-day Greece, city-states become competitive during this time. You have trading markets, agoras, marketplaces, they develop. And then the unfortunate human trafficking, right? Slavery, human chattel. And then you see Greek philosophy, right? Folks like Socrates, right? That humans and their place in society should take precedence over conquests and wealth, right? Socrates and Plato a little bit later, right? And then common cultures in the Americas and sub-Saharan Africa. We talked about the Chavin people, fragmented but unified by deities. The Olmecs, right, created political and economic institutions, deep interest in the supernatural. And in sub-Saharan Africa, right, the Sahel, meaning coast, a vast desert. And the Meroitic people, right, the Meroitic people, keep having a hard time saying that, adopting a lot of Egyptian culture through hieroglyphics and pyramids. The Kushites as well, moving away from Egypt, a major rival, right? The Meroitic kingdom, they don't do that, right? They are kind of welded to Egyptian influences. So there is a wrap on that. Let's take a look at what's up ahead. And we are dealing with kind of a split week, right? This took a little bit of mental gymnastics here on my part to see when I wanted to assign things. As you read, like the lecture is available immediately, right? These are the facts of the chapter I want you to know, to do the review quiz with, and use the review quizzes to study for test 2, right? Videos have the Axial Age and Socrates and Confucius for you audio-visual types. Review quiz will be ready to go on October the 13th, which is Wednesday of this week. So that'll give you several days to look at that, take that before we break for the fall break, right? So from the 13th to 15th is the fall break. I mean, you can keep the review quiz. You can pick it up when you get back. That's up to you. I just thought you might want to get out of the way and have a clean break, right? That's not to say what other professors and instructors intend to do in that regard. I can't control that. The initial discussion post, when you come back, when you guys come back on the 20th, I'm going to make it available. I think I'm going to make it available on the 20th. I think I might switch that and make it available on the 20th. give you guys something to do, and then have your discussion post, the initial discussion post done by Friday. And then, of course, you know the drill, right? The response posts have to be in by Sunday. And there you have that. So you guys have, hopefully you have just a wonderful break. And in the meantime, any questions or comments, get a hold of me. If you want to meet with me on a, have a conference call, my office hours are in the evening, so we can do that during the evenings. And don't be afraid to ask about that. So until next time, I will talk to you later, right? Do well and everything, right? Bye-bye.